Bienvenidos, mis amigos. Yes, it's Tristan. This is Quick Stuff for this week, and we are talking about Mexico. I'm pretty excited. I had a request from Reddit user Carl_Mox, who wanted to give a wrap up of the recent Mexican election that everybody is super excited about because people are talking about it like it's a Jeremy Corbyn moment or a Bernie Sanders moment. And it kind of is. So let's break down exactly what it is. I will give a disclaimer that this was all research that I did for this video. I actually didn't know much of this myself, but let's learn together, shall we? So the first thing that we need to know about Mexican politics, especially when it comes to the role of the president, is that they have very, very strict term limits. The cohort getting elected this election to their Senate are the first candidates that will be allowed by law to run for re-election. And the presidency is still beholden to a term limit of 1 term, which means that basically if you're going to do politics, you only do it once. So that means that in every single election, there's no incumbent. Now let's talk about the Mexican presidency. The person who is leaving power is Enrique Peña Nieto, who is a divisive figure, to say the least. He's known for breaking up a lot of the monopolies, but also is responsible for a lot of neoliberal policies, trying to privatize things. He's also gotten a lot of trouble for dealing with El Chapo Guzman or other Mexican drug cartels. His response has been a little lackluster. So there are many, many Mexican political parties, but in this election, they roughly fell under 3 major coalitions with 1 independent. And that's significant because this is actually the first election in Mexican history in which an independent is allowed to run for president. So Jaime Rodriguez Calderon is actually the first to do so in a big way. I mean, he got 5% of the popular vote, so it only went so far, but still a cool thing to point out. So because of the many political parties in Mexico, they have branded together under 3 major coalitions, which would basically mean that you can vote for whatever party you want at the ballot box, but groups of political parties are embracing a single presidential candidate. So let's talk about the first one, Por Mexico al Frente. Now this is the centrist position. This is literally the merging of a center-left and center-right political party in order to push their candidate. And the candidate this time was Enrico Anaya, but this coalition in the previous times actually pushed the guy who just won for president. So they are a powerful coalition, to say the least. And they're a mix of different interests: social democracy, Christian democracy, and conservatism. So basically, they're the center of the Overton window, if you will. Now let's talk about the Todos por Mexico, which was an interesting coalition of groups. It wraps up a bunch of right-wing parties, but also green parties. So having groups like the Institutional Revolutionary Party and like the Eco-Green Party of Mexico. And the leader is Jose Correbeña. So this is like a mix of liberal capitalism, corporate capitalism, and a lot of green energy, like a lot of eco-capitalist, green conservatism, things like that. This right-wing green movement, which we have to some extent. Our Green Party is actually a lot more right-wing in Canada than the one in the United States. It's quite interesting. Now, I think, though, everyone's talking about the Juntos Haremos Histórica, which is an interesting coalition of left-wing parties and socially conservative parties. And in December, for the election, they announced that they were going to be supporting Andrés Manuel López Obrador, or AMLO, as he's known in Mexico endearingly, who has run for president 3 times, and 3rd time apparently was the charm because he's now the president-elect. And after the 2012 election, he actually left the previous coalition in order to found this group, the Morena. And it has a lot of interesting things going on. It is a strong social democratic and also democratic socialist and socialist group of politics, but also has a little bit of reformism, the idea of changing the institution from within rather than replacing the system. So it's a kind of gradualist in that sense. On top of that, there's also something called Cardenism, which is a specifically Mexican thing, which references an older president who is responsible for taking a lot of things out of the private sector and nationalizing them. So this is an ideology based on trying to increase the state's presence in a lot of industries. Cardena, who it's based off, was the person who took all of the Mexican oil companies and unified them into Pemex, which is the national oil company that's run by the Mexican government. If you ever go to Mexico, you'll notice that every single gas station is a Pemex. And he won, and in a stunning fashion, because this doesn't usually happen in countries that have 4 candidates running, got over 50% of the vote. So this was a major turnaround election for AMLO. It's going to be huge. This left-wing government really did stick out as sort of a middle finger against neoliberalism. And he won by such a huge margin, even in government, that the coalition is going to be running the government and have absolute control for the next few years. And actually, Mexico only started having multi-party elections in 2000, and this is the largest coalition that's ever been put together ever since then. AMLO himself is calling this the fourth transformation of Mexico, which is a reference to a historical period referring to independence from Spain, a series of reforms called La Reforma in 1867. That was the reforms that separated church and state, and the 1910 Mexican Revolution. So this is the fourth one. And AMLO ran on a platform saying that the other parties had become out of touch with the needs of the Mexican people, and in order to fight back, AMLO needed to get elected. Didn't hurt that he also said that he would stand up against Donald Trump, and as Donald Trump got more and more aggressive towards Mexico, AMLO's support started to go up. Man, I really wish that happened in Ontario. Instead, we just got baby Trump. Now, AMLO has said that he wants to preserve NAFTA in some fashion, but he's also said that he plans to institute supply and price controls in farming in Mexico, which will mean that they'll have to really, really renegotiate how NAFTA works. So do expect that AMLO is going to be an interesting new president on the Mexican frontier. I do say that I expect good things from him, but you know, he's a politician, so I'm sure he'll never fail to disappoint. And his making common cause with social conservatives has me worried. But who knows? With NAFTA having him in the room, maybe there'll be some more interesting things happening. I really hope so. Somebody once asked me on my stream yesterday if Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn, and AMLO could all be in charge at the same time, and man, that could be promising. It does show that socialism is this thing that everybody says is awful, but seems to get a lot of popularity, mostly because it promises and does concrete and good things for most people. No wonder media pundits hate it so much. It also makes me happy and worried for Jagmeet Singh come next year, because that's when we go to the polls. So we'll see how that all goes down. PayPal.me/stepbackhistory. I wanted to point out that I have this PayPal URL that you can go to if you are a fan of Step Back, if you liked a particular video, but you're not totally on board for signing up for a monthly donation. You can do one-time donations at the address at paypal.me/stepbackhistory. It's a way to chip in a couple bucks, and it really helps me out. It's moving Step Back towards stability. And of course, like button, share button, subscribe button, bell button, all the buttons. Push them all so that all the good Step Back happens to you. Anyways, see you on Thursday for more Step Back.